Okay, welcome everyone to this weekly Wednesday webinar delivered by STORK. I'm Savannah Hance and I am a consultant with STORK's Asset Management Technology Group, and I will be your moderator for this webinar. I want to just thank you all for taking the time to dial in. We all live in very interesting times right now, and it's making us reevaluate the choices that we make on a daily basis. So all the more thanks for spending a little bit of time with us today. From our side, we're happy to share our knowledge with you, and we hope that it can help you navigate this current crisis situation. Of course, due to the crisis, as you'll see, many of us are still working from home, so you'll see some less than business backgrounds behind the speaker, so please just bear with us on that. Our webinar will be half an hour, and to avoid any static background noises, we've turned all of your microphones off, but we do really want to hear questions from you. So if you have a question, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen with a Q&A on it. You can click that button, and at the end of the webinar, we'll take some time to answer a few of those questions. The subject for today is remote collaboration, which is, of course, a very applicable topic right now for all of us being affected with the COVID-19 crisis. I think it's affecting everyone around the world in some way. Please take note that this session will be covering synchronous collaboration, which is where two or more parties are participating at the same time. There's also asynchronous remote collaboration. And this is where people make use of things like email and forums and all kinds of sharing platforms, but that won't be the topic of the call today. Now, as everyone around the globe is continuing to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic in some way, we as a society are looking at ways to continue collaborating with our friends and family and our colleagues in an effective way, but that is also remote. So for our friends and family, many of us are continuing to use old favorites like FaceTime and WhatsApp and Skype. And then people working in an office building, or in a lot of the cases from a home office these days, are continuing to use, but also getting a lot more proficient at using things like Skype for Business, Zoom, and WebEx. However, our technicians in the field, we're still seeing them use some very, very antiquated systems. And really, it's often a lot more challenging to introduce more modern systems here. Now, luckily, this isn't the case at all sites. So the challenge that we want to address today is how can we connect technicians at site while still enhancing safety, reducing costs, executing faster, improving quality, and with COVID-19 giving us the flexibility to continue to execute despite all of the travel bans that we've been seeing. So in today's session, we'll share 12 different use cases that have been implemented here at STORK. And some of these you might already be applying at your company as well, and that's awesome. But others might stretch your mind a little bit and hopefully inspire you to try it out at your site as well. Our presenter for today is STORK's Global Innovation Director, Martijn Glass. Martijn started off his career with Fluor, working on the engineering and construction side for 21 years. But over the past 5 years, he's been a part of STORK, which is a Fluor company, with a clear focus on operations, maintenance, turnarounds, and modifications. And this has given Martijn a really unique full life cycle view of industrial facilities. So I'm sure that this will be a very educational half hour for you. Martijn, take it away.
So just to start off with a quick introduction, just to show which angle we're coming from as we're presenting. STORK provides fully integrated operation, maintenance, turnaround, modifications, and asset integrity solutions. So we're not an asset owner, but we absolutely pride ourselves and are committed to keeping assets running at peak performance to support all phases of the asset life cycle. Now, we operate in about 90 countries around the world, and we typically use this graphic to reflect how we're built up and how we execute our projects. Let me just break this into 3 sections here. So starting here, STORK at site. This is what the majority of our people are. They're the boots on the ground and working day in and day out to keep the assets running, or in the case of a turnaround, to make certain the turnaround gets executed as fast as possible so that the asset can go back into production. But we also have our own bricks and mortar. These are typically located in industrial dense zones around the world, and these support multiple sites. So this is typically where we have our specialists but also our planners planning the turnarounds months in advance. This could also be our workshops in which we revise and overhaul compressors, turbines, valves, and other equipment. And lastly, what we have is what we call STORK in the cloud. This is where our experts reside. This is also our online knowledge database filled with innovations, available 24/7 for all employees. Now, does this mean we have 3 different companies? Of course not. We try to draw on every project. We try to draw on all 3 levels to whatever makes sense. And we also make use of our digital connectivity between all 3 layers to make the travel something that we don't need to do a lot. But today we're going to focus especially on this guy here, the technician in the field. And I'm going to be referring back to this graphic in the top right-hand corner every time. So he can see me, kind of see, is he only communicating with people in the green zone, is next to people at site, or is he also collaborating with other parts of the STORK organization? Now, before I go into the use cases, let's just get the tool thing out the way, because tools is important, but not the most important thing, as I'll be sharing in this presentation. So what tools do we have at our disposal for remote collaboration? Well, first of all, there's the voice only. Traditional, very secure, and we have Motorola, Kenwood, and a lot of others who make excellent portaphones out there in all kinds of colors and flavors. But one leg up, of course, is the totally integrated kits. And this could be the boom mic or the throat mic, and 3M has a very impressive suite here. But it really becomes different once you start adding video. We sometimes refer to that as 2.0 in our company. So this is where the Orbit X, or even just a GoPro, and you've got the single direction video streaming that gets added and really allows enhanced collaboration with other people on the other side of the line. Going to 3.0, we add data. Now that's a big leg up again. And this is the realm of the tablets, the smartphones, and also applications like Skype, like as Savannah was mentioning, WebEx, Zoom, LibreStream, and all kinds of flavors in this one as well, of course. And then what would 3.5 be? I guess you can guess it. This is the hands-free version of both voice, video, and data. And this is the realm of the smart glasses, like RealWear, and the past Dacry, and the HoloLens, of course, and there are lots of startups getting into this area. And this allows bi-directional, hands-free data, voice, and video. Now, I'm not going to move into the use case because we believe that that is so much more important, because you can have any of these, you can buy it, and then all it does is collect dust unless you know when to apply it. And that's what I'm going to be talking to especially about today. And I'm going to go through 12 totally different use cases. And we're trying to keep on stretching ourselves to find more applications of these suite of collaborative tools here. But before I go further, I'd like to just look a little bit at the audience that's listening in right now. I'm just going to do a quick poll, and I'm just going to ask you all just to say, what tools are you using in your company at the moment? So here you can see them again, 1, 1.5, 2, 3, and 3.5. And you can select multiple on the little poll sheet that's going to appear on the screen right now. So here we go, you can select multiples. I'm just going to give you a few seconds to respond. And that way I kind of know where you're coming from, and maybe I can shift some accents during this presentation. So, last second. All right. Laura, I can ask you to give the poll results. Okay. No, voice only, of course, steady out there, but very good to see quite a lot of 3.0 and 3.5s out there. Excellent, excellent. Okay, but it looks like there's some experience all over the board, but so let's get into these use cases. Going to the first one. Oops, there we go. Going to the first one, remote supervisor. I think we're all familiar of how this works. There are a lot of people at site, but are they at the right place at the right time? For example, when a piece of scope is just being finished and you need your supervisor to sign off, the client wants to sign off, that's been done. How do you get them all at that same spot? Well, you use the tried and tested portaphone, but that takes a lot of time for everybody to convene. And just looking at that picture over there, it's just amazing to see how we're all, quite a lot of you on the line right now, but we just think, well, wait a minute, that's not COVID proof if you all gather around like that. So in the company, we've been greatly putting on steroids of late is tablets. The technicians often are using tablets anyway to get their work scopes. So why not just use the camera on that same tablet and dial everybody in digitally? In this case, it's a tablet, but it could have been the smartphone. It could have been even the hands-free, in this case, RealWear. We've used them all. And we're really noticing that this allows the technician, as soon as he's finished, to dial in a lot of people, even people that typically want to be there but can't be there because of time constraints. Just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, dial them in and get on to your next job. And we've just seen hands-on tool time really go up because of this. Moving to the next example. And this is remote commissioning. There are lots of plants that we help start up, but typically there's some critical equipment there where the OEM comes along, the original equipment manufacturer has to come along and support that commissioning. And with COVID recently, we had quite some plants where the international commissioning folks were quarantined in hotels and couldn't fly away anymore. So at one site in Kentucky, particularly, and the OEM was from Italy, so they couldn't come out anymore. And the client was really fearing that this would impact their the startup of the facility. But in this case, STORK is the boots on the ground maintenance provider. We know the facility very well. We know the safety regulations, and we had RealWear there. So armed with the RealWear, we could just connect with the people in the hotel or even back in Italy and continue some critical commissioning work. Now it's still ongoing, but we really feel that, you know, this shows you can save air travel, which is cost, and we could still remain on schedule, even though there were some, some people couldn't get to site thanks to remote collaboration. But again, you used RealWear in this case, but we could have used tablets or smartphones as well. The next one, the golden oldie, the remote subject matter expert or mentor. You're out there with the maintenance team, you got the equipment open, and you're just missing one person maybe who can just give that crucial advice. And instead of continuing on or trying to call that person, and that person then has to travel to the facility, taking a lot of time, just dialing that person in. And again, it could be with the RealWear, it could be, especially with the middle one, actually, we found quite a lot of projects appreciate just putting the smart tablet with a Gorilla Pod, which is quite often magnetic as well. You can just position it in one place and the expert can just look along. And maybe everything goes right, but it's just amazing what confidence it gives to the team, and their efficiency just goes up, just knowing that the expert is looking over their shoulder and making certain that things are going the right way. And of course, there are some cases where maybe, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars is being saved because the expert does pitch in and say, wait a minute, guys, this should be done differently. Moving on to the next one, and here a little disclaimer that this is still in the testing phase, but what we see here on the left is a lone worker. This happens, not a preferred execution, but it could be the nuclear area, or it could be some other reason why he's alone. And just having an extra pair of safety eyes is something that we feel we really need to invest in. So what we've done here is we've put a little 360 camera, streaming 360, which then takes you to somebody else. This person could be watching what is happening, what the guy is doing in front of him, but this person can also swivel around and look what's happening behind the person or above the person. It gives complete flexibility for that other person to look wherever they want. Now, again, this is in the testing phase. We've tested at 3 different sites, and all 3 sites came back and said, well, the Wi-Fi and connectivity is not strong enough for a good smooth image, but this definitely has promise. So who knows, maybe with 5G, but this is definitely something we want to add to our suite of tools. Maybe we'll call this 4.0 once it's up and running. Continuing on the safety angle, and extra eyes in the sky. At STORK, we're starting to use drones, of course, more and more for flare tip inspections, but also during construction, where just having some drone up there that can look at it from a different angle really makes a lot of sense. Now, historically, the inspector would have to stand next to the drone pilot to view what the drone pilot's seeing. But recently, we've just been connecting it via WebEx to other people around the world who can then watch on and give advice and just maybe help avoid a lot of mistakes being made, or the safety issues being avoided. Great opportunity. And again, we haven't tested this too often yet because we're still very much in the paradigm that, hey, if the drone pilot's there, inspector, go and stand next to him. We've got to break people's paradigm and say, hey, you can stay in the office, you can stay at home, you can be at the other side of the world and still helping out projects by being that extra eyes in the sky. Telemedicine. Historically seen, we do a lot of medical checks, of course, before people go to site. And of course, preferably the doctor's right there in front of you, but especially with COVID and the increased demand for medical staff, where people are feeling anxious, just being able to dial a doctor has really paid its dividends. And also, if there is an accident, what faster way can you get a doctor than through a cell phone or a laptop, and just get them on there and remotely support whoever needs that help. And again, it can't be underestimated that good communication, just knowing that you can call a doctor, is already gives peace of mind, and peace of mind in itself already leads to safer work. Remote inspection. Recently, a few weeks ago, we had this compressor. It was the malfunctioning, and the client asked us to come out immediately. We could very quickly mobilize 2 technicians, but the inspector that we wanted to go out for the inspection was caught up in a different site, and he couldn't get there. So what we did is we armed our guys with the realware, and the inspector could just dial in from his office and give the directions, open up this, look at this dial, tell me what you're seeing, or rather he could see what they were seeing, and he could make the right calls so that the technicians could make the right adjustments to get that compressor back up and running again. And this is actually, we thought of this as, you know, first you might be thinking, well, this reduces travel costs, but we've also found actually that these key inspectors, they're quite tough to get by these days. They're real good ones. And by not having them travel, they can do 2 or maybe even 3 times as many inspections than they used to be able to do because they were traveling. And especially the experienced ones, travel isn't what they, you know, they've had their travel days and they don't mind missing the travel. So from a retention point of view, we've also noticed some interesting findings here as we're moving into this remote world. Remote note taker. This is also an interesting one, that these things just happen in the field. We often have our people working at ropes, and they already have their tools with them and the ropes, of course. You don't want to have extra things with you, but they are performing tasks and we want them to document that. So we've tried things like voice to text, but we've noticed that in the noise at site and often the dialects that these people talk in and the technical jargon, the Google and Siris aren't that good at interpreting those yet. So there's quite a lot of frustration there. And eventually what happens, they do their task, go back to the office, and hours later start making their reports. Now, instead of that, we've decided, hey, how about not giving them, you know, tools that can only drop, but giving them the hands-free version and let them then dial in to somebody who speaks their dialect and then immediately put the make the report in the right system right there and then. So what we're now getting is a very fast turnaround, but also very accurate turnaround, because the report's being made as the guy is finishing his task and not hours afterwards when he's already started to forget things. Going to another, dangerous working at heights, the previous one, this is confined space. Again, people are often completely suited up. You're not waiting on another push to talk button here and a loose portaphone there that you could potentially lose or stumble over, or often need repairs. And we've seen big dividends when we started to arm these people with a completely integrated headsets and the throat mic. And we've noticed that these teams, they work all of a sudden a lot closer together, but they don't have to stand so close that they, you know, have to yell at each other. They can just talk with each other. And that feeling of safety again. We've seen teams, due to this innovation and other innovations, I must admit, but they've gone back from cleaning out oil tanks from a 7-week schedule to a 4-week schedule with half the people. It's amazing what good communication tools do. Moving to something else, I'll just talk a little bit about noise, but we also have sites, quite a lot of sites actually have temporary noise. So this could, for example, be when the HVAC kicks in. Then all of a sudden, people have to wear the earplugs. So in good practice, people are continuously wearing the earplugs because you don't know when the HVAC is going to kick in. But what we see then is people have to stand very close to each other and they have to shout at each other to make each other heard. And that's, it's just not very handy. So we looked on the market and we found something very interesting. And these are hunting buds. So what are these? These are little earbuds that hunters put in, and it actually amplifies soft noises. So if you're if you're hunting, you'd be in the reeds, you want to hear every single noise. But as soon as the gun goes off, you want to have noise cancellation. And that's exactly what happens. So we've started to apply these now in big facilities where the warehouse, where the HVAC makes a lot of noise, and these people can just whisper with each other if they want to and still be heard. They can stand at a distance and still communicate with each other. But if the HVAC kicks in, they have the noise cancellation to protect their hearing. Moving now a little away from the site, so I'm going to have the last two examples are coming here. I'm going to just leave the technician. This is outside of the technician here, but I found them too good to not share. Management walks. Here you can see a little map of the Netherlands. We've got several of these bricks and mortar service centers in the Netherlands. And we have a long-standing practice that management from one center, for example, in the south here, will go to the north and we do a safety round. But they also talk about innovations and new work practices and new tools that have been implemented at a different warehouse. And in this way, they learn a lot faster. But of course, with COVID, just traveling 300 miles, these are restrictions all of a sudden imposed online, and then we start looking for different solutions. And in this case, we started to use Teams. And here on the right, you can see Peter and Renee from the management team from Elslo, and they're dialing into the north. And there you can see one of the workshops where they're revising a control valve, and they could look along and share the latest stuff that Elslo has been developing related to control valves, and of course, safety and other innovation things. And another interesting thing here, you can see Antonio, one of our up and coming engineers, and he's actually from Germany, from our Essen facility, but he could listen in and see the other facility and learn more about what STORK does, how STORK does things, and maybe an opportunity that he wouldn't have received in times when travel was possible. But now, because we're going to the remote reviews, all of a sudden he can go and see these other facilities as well. Moving to my last example, third-party inspection. For those not aware, typically if you buy some critical equipment, you want to inspect it before it leaves the OEM's facility. Is everything in order? The right material, the right certificates, the right user manuals, but also the right dimensions. And with FAT testing, the factory acceptance test, just is it doing what it should do? You don't want to find this out once the equipment's at site, because if something's really wrong, you have to send it back and the project could really get some severe delays. Historically, we would send an inspector, and STORK has a whole network of inspectors globally. But of course, with the travel ban, we've seen a great uptake, long last, of our remote third-party inspection, where we just have our best people waiting and then electronically linking up with the OEM site, where somebody is holding a tablet and then doing all the inspections, as I mentioned, on the certificates, on the manuals, the dimensions, the FAT tests remotely, greatly cutting back on costs and also making last minute inspections possible, because quite often somebody forgot to schedule them, and in this case we can really respond very fast. So these were the 12 use cases that I wanted to share with you. I hope you enjoyed those. Let me just summarize a little bit. We talked about doing engineering and construction. We talked about third-party inspection. We talked about the extra set of eyes in the sky with the drone, also during construction, the remote commissioning at the end. Then during O&M, absolutely the telemedicine to give our boots on the ground all the support they need. We talked about temporary noise. We talked about remote inspection. We talked about remote experts, especially during turnarounds when time is critical to get the right expert to get in there. Remote supervision to sign off. The streaming 360, what we're looking at. Remote management walkthroughs, the working at heights, the note taker, and also to support confined space work. And I could have shared a few more, but time is already running out. Now, the benefits, without a shadow of doubt, at the very top, we want to put safety. There's going to be less people at site, so less congestion, but just again, the enhanced communications absolutely gives safer results. If people feel less anxious and more certain about what they're doing, they really work more safely as well. But also increased flexibility to deliver, especially in these COVID times. Faster response times. If you need the expert, you don't have to wait for them to travel. Just dial them in, get them out there. Better quality, so that you again dial in that expert, get that peace of mind that you're making the right decisions. Now, there is, of course, the investment cost. I'll be talking about a little later, but in hardware and software. But we really feel that that is typically offset by eliminated travel costs and first-time right execution, schedule gains, and other things. And lastly, let's not forget sustainability. Less travel, but also more usage of local craft, who then can get the expert in, maybe an expert who would never take the time to tell him something, but just train the local craft remotely. Really, I think that enhances the sustainability within the community. We talked about the tools. Again, I hope you saw that which tool you use, as long as it's above the 1.0 and 1.5, there is a lot of benefit of moving there. And a question, of course, a little bit, which ones do you use? We'll do a little list here of the selection options. I mean, what type of work are you doing? Do you need voice? Is voice enough? Of course, just use voice. But if you think that video and data is going to help, if you're going to get your work back anyway on a tablet, criticality of the work, how important is it? Which PPEs? Is working hands-free important, for example? Frequency of use, connectivity. Of course, it all fails if you don't have good connectivity. And maybe we even have to invest in a good Wi-Fi network to make this all happen. Zone, is it explosion proof? Are there intrinsic safe requirements? The noise level, is this something, do you need that the noise cancellation or not? And let's face it, I mean, what efficiency do we believe we can achieve? Because eventually it is, of course, a cost-benefit ratio needs to be in balance. Now, the final takeaway, with all those benefits I just mentioned, the tools that are readily available anywhere you want, you might be asking yourself, why isn't this happening more? When we did the poll earlier, not everybody is using the full suite. So what are the things? When we took a step back, we said, well, it's actually 4 components. And the first 2 are people need to want to collaborate. Quite often we notice that technical people, they want to solve things themselves. And I think that's one thing that as management team, you need to keep reinforcing people that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but actually a sign of strength. So it's really a culture that you have to nurture for real remote collaboration to take off, that they will dial somebody in. But also, there needs to be an investment done by the subcontractors. Evaluate the options, test security. Security is, of course, more and more important these days. And then actually buy the hardware and software, but also train people, maintain the hardware. This needs to be done. And the last one we'd like to call out to make it real success is the client, the asset owners themselves. There are still, unfortunately, quite some barriers we're coming across that is inhibiting the full usage and the full potential of remote collaboration. And one of them certainly is, that appreciation of the value it brings. As long as owners will go for the lowest man-hour rate and not give any appreciate the reduced cost and the enhanced quality, then it becomes, of course, very difficult to validate the investment in these tools. But we feel certain that if all 4 of these come together, safety will be enhanced and reduced costs will be reduced overall. Execution will be faster, quality will improve, and most importantly, maybe in these COVID times, the work can continue if we apply remote collaboration. So I'm here spending it all the time. I apologize for that. So I'm quickly going to hand it over now to Savannah, Just any questions that I can still answer in the last minutes?
Sure. Thank you
Which
so
ones
much.
jumped out?
Thanks so much, Martijn, for this presentation. So we did have a handful of questions that came in. We're a little short on time, but I am going to take just one that I found interesting. Can you please tell us about what are some of the typical client pushbacks for using some of these tools?
Yeah, we maintain a little internal list on this one. The one we first always come across is it's our policy that videoing at site is not allowed. That's one we hear a lot. We're also afraid that it might interfere with our control systems. And we also, some say it might distract you if you have too much communication and apps at your disposal. Some clients also will only reimburse hours which are actually executed at site. So it's quite a long list, actually. I should have taken it with me, maybe. But it's we've noticed that if we sit down with clients, all of them go away. All of them nearly go away because, for example, the one on the interfere with control systems, the critical ones are all hardwired. So even if it would interfere, we've never come across it being a problem. But anyway, I'm digressing. The list is quite long, but it's none of them really hold up compared to the benefits achieved through the remote collaboration tools. That's our experience, at least.
Okay, thank you so much. So as our time has run out, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the webinar. I hope you've all gained some valuable insight on some of the things to help you in your daily business. We, of course, any questions that were asked that we did not get to today, you'll receive answers to those questions in the follow-up material. Everyone will receive that. Also, if you have any use cases that you'd like to share, please send us a note. You can do that by, again, just clicking on the Q&A button and sharing that with us. We like to get our minds stretched as well, so please do that. Also, if you want to hear any more information about a certain solution that Martijn has presented, also just leave us a note there and we'll follow up with you. So as I mentioned before, this webinar is part of our series of weekly Wednesday webinars about smart maintenance and asset management related topics. And we hope that you guys can all join us next Wednesday. At the same time, we'll be talking about the roadmap towards a more Industry 4.0 driven organization. So you can get more information on that and register via our website, which is stork.com. And as I mentioned, this webinar and the presentation and the recorded webinar will both be available on the Stork website, and all registered attendees will be receiving an email with the link to that in the coming days. So to wrap up, I'd just like to thank you all once again for joining us. I wish you a safe and productive rest of your day. And as always, we continue to be your partner in the field of smart maintenance and asset performance improvement. So hope to see you next week.